that from the early 80s all the way up until 2003, 4, 5 kind of time frame. And so I did, floppy disks and disk drives and graphic software and, Novell and all the,
Novell. Whoa,
yeah,
you're hardcore. You're hardcore.
Networks before the internet. All that. You name it, I was involved. Yeah. So, and the PC clones and, Chips and Technologies and Dell and et cetera. So anyway, and kind of my last great hurrah was, or the thing that really paid the most, I guess I should say, was I started doing the internet stuff in the 90s, or 93, 4. I was given a card with internet address, and I thought, gee, this is a pretty interesting idea. And so I went and I invested in everything private in the internet area I could. And that really worked out well because 93, 4 was kind of the launch, and Netscape came out, and Netcom, which I was involved with, went public. And so we had a really nice run from kind of the mid 90s up until the top of that bubble in 2000. And we managed to get out of a lot of it, not all of it. So the tail end of the fund got hurt a little bit, but for 5 years, we had really fabulous returns. And at the end of that, I kind of decided I wanted to retire and spend time with my kids and just manage money privately, not be a professional investor anymore. And a bunch of circumstances led to that. And we don't have to go into those. But anyway, so I'm hanging around investing my own money, and it's always very strongly in sound money. I knew that since 71, we'd kind of gone down the wrong path. And intrinsically, I was kind of intrigued by the idea of a private form of digital money. And I'd followed a lot of them. eCash and DigiCash and, David Chaum's work. And, there was Nick Szabo did BitGold and all that kind of stuff. So, but none of them worked. They all kind of ran into problems. The government jumped on eCash, and none of them really worked. And so I was kind of like, well, when Bitcoin came out, I read it, the white paper, heard of it from the Ron Paul people I was familiar with. I didn't believe it. I was kind of like, yeah. We've heard this before. Sure. Okay. Another one. Is this really going to work? So I was a little slow. I wish I had been Max Kaiser and had believed and dove in and started buying it at $2 a coin. That would have been a pretty good thing to do. But I didn't think to do that. I know some people who did.
What was the moment? What was the moment that made you think, okay, there's something real here? Was there?
Well, when it went, it went from 2 to 10 or 20, and it was still kind of a joke. And the pizza transaction happened, and it was, that was still a very low number. That was actually before going to 20. I think when it got to about 100, there were several runs, and when it got to about $100 a coin, and then maybe when it went with the first run between 100 and 1,000, I'm trying to get my years right, but I think we're in actually 3.5 was the low, and I bought all the way down that. I bought a bunch of 9. I bought some more in the 3-4 range, and just kind of figuring. And I didn't honestly know. My concern. I've talked to Max about this. My concern was always the technology. I was afraid the technology might fail. I didn't. I didn't know what SHA-256. I was not smart enough, and I hadn't done enough, study of how well designed it is to get completely comfortable that it was going to continue to run flawlessly for 15 years. And I even got thrown off the scent I was in Boston. I went to some of the MIT Bitcoin forums. I met a couple of core developers. I said, how confident are you guys that this thing is going to work? And they said, well, sometimes we worry about it. They're pretty honest about it. They said, sometimes we make a change, and I think to myself, shit, I might have crooked the whole network. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, I can have some money in this thing, but I can't put big money into this thing because it's just not. And as you know, we went through block size wars. We went through, all the chains, the forks, et cetera. There were some bad. Everyone who's using Excel today, Excel used to be Lotus 1-2-3. Okay. And Lotus 1-2-3 was the first spreadsheet. And he came into our classroom and he put a thing up on the wall, and he said, look at this, I put these numbers in these squares, and then I hit the sum button and they all add up. I was like, oh my God. I was just blown away. Like,
after using an old ledger, like a paper-based ledger, trying to add.
I had just come off of 2 years on Wall Street. I had literally a green ledger tablet, and I would get these 10 Qs, which by the way, we had to pay a company called Disclosure a lot of money to FedEx to them. They would sit at the SEC in New York, in either New York or Washington, and take a picture of a 10Q, right? They would mimeograph it, and then they would, or photocopy it, and they would put it in a FedEx package, and they would send it to my office so that I would have those financials, right? I mean, because there was no internet, I couldn't get it, and I would pay them a lot for that service. And then I would take those numbers and I would spread them out on a green tablet. Is the issue that, the U.S. has the reserve currency, and therefore we had to print it and grow it, or else the world runs out of money. And so what they made a mistake at Bretton Woods. They should have picked the neutral reserve asset, which would have been gold. And gold is basically the old neutral reserve asset. It's analog sound money. Bitcoin is digital sound money. It's superior to it in every fashion because, and by the way, the reason the gold standard failed for two reasons. One, politics and the law. We went off it. We're not even on it anymore. So, but two, they also created a ton of paper gold, and they were really good at doing that. And that's hours long discussion unto itself. But what Bitcoin offers is, and gold is heavy. It's hard to verify. There've been tungsten, bars plated with gold. I mean, it's got all these problems, so to speak. I mean, nobody even really knows who owns what. It's tough to verify. We haven't audited Fort Knox since the 50s. I mean, there's amongst conspiracy folks, and I'm sympathetic to it. There's some question as to whether we really have the gold we say we have. And so it's a problem. And, because it's hard to know who has what, you're kind of dealing with a ledger that you're not sure is honest. The thing about Bitcoin that makes it so different is that the ledger's out there for everybody to see. They, will give them the middle finger when they try and do that. But it is a threat. I mean, it is realistic, and governments are going to do anything they can, or, I think are at risk of doing anything they can to preserve their privilege. Now, having said that, so I think Jeff's point is we got to get it out there so it's being so widely used as a means of exchange. How the hell are they going to grab it? Everybody's using it. You can't take it away, and so, but the critical piece there, in my view, is that you've got to get the Lightning Network really up and running on a full basis. And that's a tricky problem because there's not really enough money in the Lightning Network to develop, big channels. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but from what I can tell, Lightning Network's a little bit of a paradox because it's very, very low cost, but that means it's not very attractive for anybody to enter and put the resources into it to make it really work well. But, there are things like Fedimint and others that are coming, and I suspect ultimately there'll be private channels that will, for 10 basis points or something, say, look, we're going to guarantee that your Lightning payment gets there instantly on time, no problem, whatever it might be. And as that becomes the case, as we now know from multiple Fed chairmen and other people in our federal government, they are never going to let the U.S. default because they have a printing press and they can print the money necessary in order to, nominally meet the obligation. But there's a big emphasis on that word nominally because, if they're printing the money to meet the obligation, well, that's just one step removed from the banana republic and, republics. And, we know how those tend to end. I mean, Argentina and Venezuela are a couple of good examples where hyperinflation has taken place. And if you want to go back further, there's a case of it in Germany and the Weimar Republic and so forth. So, to me, what's going to happen is we are headed toward a major debt crisis. I mean, we're, as Lynn Alden points out, we're in fiscal dominance right now. There's no will in Washington, D.C. to solve the problem. There's no discussion of cutting expenses or spending. They literally have to continue to inflate and debase the currency to keep the system running. You could know nothing about finance and read this and go, oh, I get it. This is why I'm getting screwed, and this is what I got to do.
Larry, I just want to tell you something on this point. Just when you're writing this book, the amount of people that told me they're so excited to hear you speak is because you present things very clearly in a way that is your own. So just know that this book, it is going to find a place.
I mean, hopefully it'll be good. I'm terrified.
It's going to be great. I'm not even going to listen to it.
It'll be me. I'll tell you that. It'll be genuine. It's very genuine. It's got a lot of Larryisms in it. My wife has got me on a no F-bomb rule. So I've been trying to be very well behaved, and obviously the book will be clean. But
oh shit,
that's quite hard.
Yeah.
I like hanging out with Foss and dropping.
I like it when you two are hanging out. I like it when
it's a lot of fun.
I'm going to put this up. So